Hello, Jimmie Nation. I'm Austin Mack, filling in for Devin Bratton on Jimmie Connections, Episode 6. Today I'm joined with Professor Ben Kirkeby. Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Ben Kirkeby. Like Austin says, I am a North Dakota native, born in Fargo, North Dakota. I lived there till I was about 4 or 5. I had a quick stint down in Dallas, Texas, and ended up ultimately in Grand Forks, where I consider to be my hometown. I was there for roughly 15 years of my life. Then ended up going back to Fargo to complete my degrees. And since then I have taught at NDSU for a couple of years. I also taught part-time at Concordia in Moorhead, and also 1 year full-time at Concordia in Moorhead, and that's where I was prior to coming to UJ.
And then, with all that experience, were you still teaching psychology at the other schools?
I was. So with regards to my psychological history, I actually began my college career at University of North Dakota. And I went for 2 years there, didn't know what I really wanted to go into, so I took some time off. I actually ended up taking off 2 years. And then I actually had a spiritual conversion. A lot of supernatural things happened in my life, which led me then to want to become a Catholic priest. I then looked into becoming a Catholic priest, and they had a relationship with North Dakota State University, the seminary, Cardinal Lynch Seminary, had a relationship with NDSU, where I would get my philosophy degree and then move on to what they would call major seminary, kind of like graduate school, I guess. And in the course of that process, I also decided I was going to double major, figuring psychology could help me with the ministry. So I was double majoring while my time, while I was at NDSU. And in the process of discernment, I was in the seminary for 3 years as I was getting my undergrad degrees. And through the discernment process, I decided, and God aided me in the process of deciding not to go into the seminary or into the priesthood anymore. And so then I focused on psychology and felt as though God was leading in that direction. And I continued on with my graduate studies at NDSU, and here I am.
Awesome. And may I ask, why psychology as opposed to maybe a different subject?
I always found psychology fascinating. I mean, now I'm a psychologist, and just even looking back on my history, I was always interested in psychology. I remember in middle school, for example, I had a very particular chemistry professor who was very, very organized, okay, OCD, totally OCD. And even back then, I was fascinated by that, and I would run my little mini experiments with him. And so one day I noticed how particular he was. His desk was meticulously organized. And so I would walk in there and I'd be like, I'm going to move something. And so I would move something, noticeably move it, maybe 6, 7, 10 inches, what have you. And I would observe how long it would take him to notice it before he had to fix it. And so, so then he would come in and immediately see the 10-inch move. Oh my gosh, and he'd move it back, okay? And so then the next day or 2 days later, I would gradually, move it a little bit less to see if there was any point at which he would not notice it and thus not have to move it back. And it got to be about a 1/2 inch where he would notice anything more than a 1/2 inch and you'd have to put it back in its place. But it was just stuff like that I was just fascinated by people and in the way people think and the things that they do and so on and so forth. So I was always interested, I guess, at some level in psychology. I mean, when I first went to college out of high school, I had no interest in it. I had never taken a psychology class in high school, but always fascinated and interested in it. And with regards to that then, once I took my first psychology class, I realized that it was very interesting. It was kind of who I was, so to speak, and it was a great fit. I mean, I dove around in some other realms. I looked at pre-med to begin with, and then realized I wasn't all that good at science nor very interested in science. And so then I switched over to education, which I obviously am still interested in, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then ultimately I was like, you know what, I really enjoy psychology. Okay? And so upon looking at the psychology side of things, then I said, what do I want to do with psychology? Do I want to counsel? Do I want to teach? If I want to teach, what age range do I want to teach, and so on and so forth. And just kind of weighing the benefits and drawbacks of each of those different careers. I applied to actually 2 graduate programs. One was a counseling program and another one was a social/health psychology program. Got into them, had to decide between the two, and ultimately I decided that teaching was what I wanted to do. Got most influence in my life.
And do you find, because of your psychology background, you analyze a lot of your students that come in?
I don't. I mean, and so I think what psychology does for me in the classroom and in dealing with students is it gives me an understanding of why people are the way they are, and a greater appreciation for, you know, students that may be struggling or may have, you know, their little quirks to them or what have you. And I think it just makes me a much more accepting person and loving person. And I can relate to students, I think, through my education and through my insight with the psychology side of things. And I just think it gives me a kind of just a more general appreciation for and acceptance for the students. And, you know, in terms of analyzing my students, I don't. I mean, I've never taken, it might be surprising, so I'm a psychologist, and I've never taken an abnormal psychology class. I've never taken a single counseling class. And so when we get into the analytical side of things and, you know, looking at people, I mean, yeah, do I do it sometimes? I mean, why? What's going on with this student? Absolutely. Okay, but in terms of me being good at it and diagnosing them with some disorder or something along those lines, no. I mean, I just think, you know, you genuinely care about your students. I mean, and you have the insight. And, I mean, I think that's kind of the focus I have with using my degree in relation to the students.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite things, because I've taken your class before, developmental psych, was reading about all the different experiments people have done and stuff like that. What are some of the interesting experiments you've been a part of?
Well, when I was in grad school, I had the most crazy, I guess, for lack of a better word, but I mean, my graduate school advisor did more research than anyone alive, in my opinion. I mean, he was there until midnight every night. He's a single man, and I mean, he has hundreds of publications, literally hundreds of publications. And so, with regards to that, and just being, you know, the graduate peon that I was, I mean, I did a lot of research that I wasn't necessarily interested in, but basically had to because he was so productive. And he had 3 of us working with him, but I mean, he kept 3 of us busy just with the studies that he wanted to run. I mean, obviously, I got to run some of my own research as well. And when I did get to choose my research interests, it would basically be, you know, generally speaking, in the realm of personality. We also bridged the personality / cognition, and so how does personality relate to how you think and how your brain processes information. And more specifically, I was interested, and still am interested in the personality trait of impulsivity. So impulsivity, people who are impulsive generally, you know, they don't think before they act. Okay, if it's bad for you, gambling, drug addiction, etc., etc. If anything is bad for you, it generally is linked to impulsivity. Impulsivity is basically correlated with all these maladaptive things that people can get themselves into. And so, for my master's thesis, for example, I basically wanted to empirically show that impulsive people don't think. Long story short, they don't think. Okay? So we put it in front of a computer task, and it's called the Stroop task, but basically there are some trials, so that the basic premise of the task is that you just have to identify if it's green or red font. 2 keys are involved. You have one finger on the key that if it's red font, you hit that key, and if it's green font, you hit the other key with the other hand. And what's tricky about the task is that the words that are presented are either red or green. Okay, and so reading is an automatic process, and it's much faster than the process involved with naming font color. We don't walk around just going gray, blue, green. I mean, we don't habitualize ourselves of naming font color, so we are habituated to reading stuff. And so when a word is presented in front of you, that process is much faster compared to now I have to identify the font color. So your immediate reaction is you read it. So you've already processed the word, which says, let's say, green, but it's in red font. And so you have to basically inhibit that prepotent response, in this case, responding to the word itself rather than the font color. And so you have to inhibit that response, and you have to overcome that in order to make the correct response. And so for an impulsive person who has problems doing that kind of stuff, like we put it in the context of kind of, they're stimulus driven, okay? And so if an impulsive person is on a diet and they see a cookie, they eat the cookie because the cookie says eat me, okay? And so they don't have this ability, so to speak, to intervene between that stimulus and the response, okay? And so in this case, our prediction was that they would make more errors because they just don't, oh, wait, let me think about this. It's just, there it is, stimulus response. Well, there's a word, hit response. Oh, shoot, that's right. Okay, I'm supposed to name the font color. I reacted to the word, darn it anyway. So they did make more errors But more importantly, what we looked at was the variability in the reaction times. So we're measuring the reaction times in milliseconds, okay? And our hypothesis was that impulsive people don't have varied responses. Like I said, they just react, okay? And so their reaction times, regardless if it's if the word says green and it's green ink, okay, or green font, they're going to be fast. And if it's red and green font, they're going to be fast because they just react. Okay? They don't have the organism response between the two. They're just very environmental and response-driven individuals. And so we thought that the reaction times of an impulsive person would be, 250 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds, 275 milliseconds. Regardless of the trial, their reaction times are always just going to be very similar. Whereas a non-impulsive person, they get that incongruent trial where it says green, but you're supposed to respond to the red font. They're going to have a 500 millisecond reaction time, and on the congruent trials, they might have 200 milliseconds. And so we looked at the variability of their responses, and indeed we found that impulsive people's reaction times didn't vary as much as non-impulsive people. And so we basically said, there you go. They use the same strategy. They just simply do not think between what the stimulus is and the reaction to it. So then I took that a step further with my dissertation, and I was actually working full-time at NDSU as a research coordinator. We hit on a grant to study alcohol consumption and an intervention to reduce alcohol consumption into high-risk populations, freshmen and people turning 21. So they tend to get themselves in trouble. So we're trying to see if we can decrease their alcohol consumption with this, what we call personalized normative feedback. Basically, number one predictor of alcohol consumption is their perception of how much they think their peer group drinks. And so if I think my peer group is drinking a lot, I'm going to drink a lot, okay? And so the major problem with that is that college students generally overestimate the prevalence and how much their peers are drinking. And if they overestimate it, then that's their perception of what the norm is. Well, then it's going to increase their drinking because they fit in. They have to adhere to norms, and that's the norm that they think it is. And what personalized normative feedback interventions do is they just basically correct those misperceptions. And so we tell them, well, you think that the average college student's drinking, 11 drinks per occasion. Well, we measured all your peers that in your group, and the actual average number of drinks per occasion is 4.2. And so you correct those misperceptions by giving them that feedback, and then their drinking actually does start to decrease. Okay, and we see that their behavior does decrease over time. Okay, so my hypothesis for my dissertation then was to take the impulsivity realm. Impulsive people don't think, and so now let's say some of our participants are obviously going to be impulsive, and so let's look at our impulsive people to see if they respond as well to this intervention. And my prediction is they're not going to, because we're giving them something to think about, so that they can then utilize to change their own behaviors. If they think about it, now they're at the party, and they're like, oh yeah, I've had my 4.2 drinks now, okay, I don't want to be a high-risk drinker, I don't want to be outside of that norm, okay, and so my hypothesis was basically this intervention just simply isn't going to work with impulsive people because they don't think. We gave them something to think about, they looked at it, they read it, but they're not going to think about it, they're not going to implement it into their lives, and more importantly, when they get into the situations in which the party says drink, they're not going to have that organismal response to inhibit the behavior. They're just going to drink. They're going to drink until the party's over. Okay? Because that's what impulsive people do. They don't take what are the consequences involved with this. Do I need to wake up tomorrow? Do I have a test the next day, and so on and so forth. It just the party says drink. I'm going to the party. I'm going to drink. Okay. And that was my dissertation. And it did somewhat turn out. I mean, it wasn't as clear cut as I was hoping it would be, but p-values got close, and it did show that impulsive people were less responsive to the intervention.
Right. And then you're also involved in the character and leadership program here on campus. Can you tell us about how you're involved in the organization and why it's important to you?
All right. So character and leadership, I have had 2 roles within the character and leadership program, actually 3, I guess. But I used to do the sophomore local service project, and I did that for, I believe, 2, maybe 3 years. And then we kind of revamped, and I took on the junior character and leadership service project. And I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now. With regards to the third responsibility or role I guess I have played is in the development of the Masters in Leadership program now, which we started just this fall. And so I was on the steering committee for that, kind of figuring out what classes we were going to offer, what tracks, if you will, so what types of leadership experience can you get from or through this program. And I was kind of part of that brainstorm brainstorming and creation committee.
And the service or character and leadership is very servant leadership driven. What would you say the differences are between the undergrad and then the master's program?
With regards to, I mean, there's some similarities. I mean, you're going to be learning about some of the same leadership styles and leadership issues within both programs, and it is a continuation of our undergraduate program into the master's program to a certain extent. I mean, you're going to be learning some of the same things, obviously in more depth. And so, where in one class you'll learn about, these different styles of leadership. You might take an entire class on one style of leadership within the master's program. And so, but also within the master's program, it gets more specific as well in terms of, what role of leadership do you want to focus on? So with regards, for example, we have a nonprofit track. Okay, so if you want to become a leader within the nonprofit sector of the world, okay, then you're going to learn a lot about leadership within a nonprofit environment. Okay, and there's also the business leadership side of things, and one more which is escaping my mind right now. But I mean, so with regards to that, it does become just more focused, more in depth, and more specialized to what you want to do with your life.
Outside of teaching, what are some of your hobbies?
Outside of teaching, I have 2 kids that preoccupy a lot of my time, and gratefully so. We spend a lot of time outdoors. We're an outdoors family. We like to fish. Both of my kids play hockey. I play hockey as well. And we're just very activity oriented. We spend a lot of time on the boat. In the summer, we live on the reservoir in Jamestown here. And so, I don't work. Kids don't have school, so we should basically play all day.
Yeah.
Generally in the water or trying to catch fish.
Cool. How excited are you to get a hockey team here on campus?
I'm looking forward to it. So with regards to the hockey team, I mean, I grew up playing hockey. I was on a U.S. kind of a junior Olympic team at the age of 13 where we went overseas and played in Norway and Sweden. So I mean, I live and die hockey. Used to. And then for a while, once I was in college, I continued to play a little bit. And then, as I got busier during perhaps the seminary years, I kind of got out of hockey for a little while. And now that I have kids again, it's kind of full circle. I'm right back in coaching. I've coached both of my kids. I'm coaching my son right now, the 8-year-old and 9-year-old boys team. And with regards to that, I mean, we're at the rink every night, and I enjoy it. I ref the high school games in town here as well, and so I'm excited. When they first kind of came up with the idea, it actually stemmed from one of the students on campus. I don't know if you're aware of that, but one of the marketing students actually kind of did a feasibility study in terms of how feasible would it be for Jamestown to get a hockey team, and here we are. And so, as something student-driven from its inception, it was a student on campus who actually came up with this idea, and they did it for a class project, and they found out that there was a lot of interest on campus about starting a hockey program, and there was already students here that could have filled an entire team. That they asked them, would you play if there was a team, and I think they had 40 kids that said, yeah, I would love to play hockey on campus. And so it kind of went from there. And then the next question was, well, if we are going to start a hockey team, what's going to be our venue? Who are we going to play? What conference are we going to get into, and so on and so forth. So they threw the idea of club hockey around, and club hockey is basically, so for example, NSU has a club hockey team, and it's just a student-run team. There's no coach. The coach, if they have a coach, it's a player coach. It's a college student. They fund themselves. They buy their jersey. They pay for travel. They pay for hotel rooms. They pay for that. And college really basically just lets them use the name. Okay. And hockey guys are kind of a different breed, so to speak. And so they approached me with the idea and said, "You're a hockey guy. What do you think about club hockey? Us starting a club hockey team?" And I told the administration, I said, "You don't want to start club hockey." I said, you just can't necessarily trust the guys. I understand hockey players. I grew up playing hockey, and they like to party. And some of them anyway. That's a generalization, but and now if you don't have a coach involved, I could see him drinking and driving. I said in most club hockey, leagues, there's fighting, and so you're gonna have fighting going on most likely. And I said, I don't like the club hockey idea at all. I said, I think it's gonna cause more headaches than good. And and so that was kind of that for a little while, and so then they started. I guess I'm speculating, but I would guess that they probably agreed at some level, like, yeah, that doesn't sound like something we want to do. And so then they probably look more serious at some leagues to see what leagues are out there that have established programs, that have coaches and conferences and postseasons and so on and so forth. And they located the ACHA, and so then I was also part of kind of the steering committee now for this hockey program as well. So we brought the commissioner, I believe it's the commissioner to the ACHA to campus kind of as a consultant to get his take on it. He was very, very enthusiastic about us joining. Minot State was also at the same conference, and in terms of a travel partner, it would have been a perfect fit. I mean, Minot State was kind of in a secluded area. People don't necessarily want to travel 800,000 miles to come play one team. So if we had a team, then they could do a double whammy, and if we went down there, we could do a double whammy, and so kind of as a travel partner, it made sense, and so we brainstormed a little more. The administration crunched some numbers, and the numbers looked like they would work, and I guess we're going now.
That's awesome. One of the things I love about the University of Jamestown is its community kind of feel. What would you say you love about the University of Jamestown?
God willing, I'm here forever. I've been at 4 campuses, I guess. I've taught at, this is my 3rd one, and in terms of student-focused, sense of community, just respect between people, happy people, student-focused campus. This ranks number 1 in my book. So I was at NDSU, and I taught a couple classes as a graduate student there, and obviously NDSU is a huge institution, and with regards to that, I was required to have 2 office hours. Okay, and so that was the biggest campus I worked at with the most students in my classes, and they required me to be in my office for 2 hours a week. And it was obviously a very research-focused institution, and so the faculty there, not generally speaking, but not there's obviously great faculty there as well, but teaching was kind of a side note for them. Their focus was on research. Many of them would rather have done just research and not teach. If they had grant money, one of the first things they'd write into their grant when they were trying to hit on money, a grant to fund the research, is they would write in money so that they could buy out of teaching. And then they wouldn't have to teach, and they could just do all the research. And so it was a very research-focused institution. Students, generally speaking, again, were kind of seen as a nuisance rather than an opportunity to make a difference in their lives. And it was a very research-focused. So then after that, then I went to Concordia, like I mentioned before. Concordia was a breath of fresh air. Okay? And with regards to that, now, kind of my thermometer is how many office hours do you have to have. Okay? And so I went to Concordia, much more student-friendly atmosphere. Their predominant focus was on students and teaching. Okay? And I was required to have 5 office hours. Okay? Oh, this is great. The teachers, the faculty seemed to get along better at Concordia and Moorhead. And it was just a very nice atmosphere. Okay? And so then, when I applied to get the job here and I came here, it was night and day even from here to Concordia. In terms of another breath of fresh air, and this is by far the most student-focused campus I've been on. Our teachers here all have an inherent interest in our students, a love for our students. They are not seen as a headache. Very rarely do I hear faculty griping, complaining about students, whereas that was the predominant topic of conversation between the faculty about students, was complaining and so on and so forth. And all the faculty here get along great, and so they're down to earth, and so on and so forth. And you don't get this academic pride that I saw at the other 2 institutions, where we're better than you and I'm better than you, and I'm going to prove to you how smart I am, and you're going to try and prove to me how smart you are. We don't do that. We just get along. We all have the same focus, and such that we're here to educate these students and love these students, and so on and so forth. And it's an incredible place to be, like I said, and I hope I'm here for the duration, because it's by far and large the most pleasant place I work with, and the students that we attract are exactly the type of students I love to interact with.
From a student standpoint, that's something I've really noticed as myself. I transferred from NDSU my freshman year to here, and even just the availability of my teachers was just a huge change for me.
Right.
And then we have just one final question for you. If you were a box of cereal, what kind would you be and why? A little abstract.
Right on. Oh. How about Cinnamon Toast Crunch? All right. Number 1, because it's a good cereal. And those Cinnamon Toast Crunch bars in the caf are delish, if you've had them.
I have.
All right. And so, but Cinnamon Toast Crunch, okay, it's sweet, okay, obviously it's got sugar on it, but there's a lot more complexity to it,
Yeah.
right? And so it's not just, it's not just, oh, I taste this, and that's what this cereal is. I taste this, and it's good, and it's complex. There's more to it than just one simple flavor. And so in terms of psychology and understanding humanity and just the complexity of it, again, cinnamon toast crunch.
Okay. Well, this concludes our 6th episode of Jimmie Connection, and thank you for being on the show with us. Mr. Kirkeby.
Well, Jimmy's.
If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like, leave a comment, retweet, and to receive notifications as we post new videos. Thanks.